One Piece chapter 980. Now it's time to analyze every single bit of this chapter and talk about things I really didn't get too deep into because now we have the official translations. So without further ado, let us go. I mentioned the cover page already, but it seems like Lola is literally just talking to Gotti about marrying her. Maybe Pound will be able to attend the wedding. Maybe that's the whole purpose of him being in Dressrosa at this point. So I don't know, we'll see. To the chapter. I mentioned this before, but for Luffy and him attacking the people that were making fun of basically playing with their food, a lot of people view that as a bad thing and some development for Luffy being lost. I definitely understand the perspective. Like a lot of the criticism I've been getting in regards to Luffy is that what if we handle things a bit differently? What if Luffy did surprise Law by going about things a bit more calculated? Personally, I thought there was no chance for that, and it's validated here. Luffy in every situation is going to go off of how he's feeling at the time. It does not matter what is at stake. He's about to face two Yonko and is kind of trampling on his ideals as far as like how he care about his friends and his Nakama. And for Tama, I think again, his connection to Ace, he cannot allow that. So for him punching these guys, it's completely understandable. Even though as a One Piece fan, you would have liked to see some progression or some development in Luffy as a character. Even though I think he has developed a bit in Wano, he's still going to be Luffy. It's really cool in that panel with Luffy and Zoro. They're on the same page and seeing them together, it always makes for great moments. I think the reason behind Luffy's motivation is obvious as Tama, but I think for Zoro, a lot of people probably forget that he has his own story with food, his own connection with the little girl and food. So that's pretty much the answer to the question as to why it's setting them off like this. They're both personally connected to characters and food has impacted them in some way. It's actually a pretty dope moment. I want to point out again, Zoro did get lost. He found Luffy from the noise in the distance, but to his credit, he walked straight in that direction and he was able to find Luffy. Walking in a straight direction is a feat for Zoro. And I'm not sure how I overlooked this. Zoro sliced this building in half, and that's part of the commotion that he caused as well. Like if you see in the panel behind Kid, it's like the slice had already happened, and then Zoro shows himself. So he's making just as much commotion as Luffy is. So him scolding Luffy is even more funny here. In regards to Udon as well, in which Apoo noticed Straw Hat, and from Apoo's intel, the last thing he heard was Straw Hat was imprisoned in Udon. Queen is also thinking back to his conversation with Babanuki, where this is news to him as well, as far as them breaking out of prison, because when he talked to Babanuki, everything was under control. So I think for Queen, I wonder who'd be responsible for this, because at the end of the day, Udon is mostly under his control. So you can tell that slightly annoyed him. In regards to Queen and the translation for him talking about the Tobiropo and what the plan was, the official says, as it happens, I got someone I want to erase right now. I'll get rid of one of the Tobiropo and create an open seat. It doesn't really clear things up in regards to the speculation about what Queen meant, but I think it's a distinction. It seems like Queen has someone in mind by saying he has someone he wants to erase right now. I don't want to harp too much on the X Drake thing because this is not really an indication of it, but if X Drake is found out, this could be a really huge thing in regards to Wano, because then what else do they know? I think it's leaning towards who's who, whereas I'm sure Queen is aware how the Tobiropo feels about him. And the person who offered that perspective as far as like, hey, if something happened to Queen, who would take the spot was who's who. So if I had to guess, I would think that's the person Queen wants to erase. Some of the users we saw in the background after Queen said that as well, they looked pretty cool. It seems like Oda is definitely going to flesh out Kaido's crew like he did Big Mom's, where we saw like a lot of her kids and all the different abilities. The same thing should be happening here with Kaido. And again, shout out to the people on Kaido's crew that are aware that they have no chance. And so, you know, it's cool what Queen said, but I'd rather drink. In regards to Luffy and Apoo, or Luffy, Zoro, and Apoo, man, I've heard it all. It's a lot of conversation around these three. I've seen live reactions, I've seen discussions, and people, the consensus is this shouldn't have happened. Luffy should not have gotten knocked out by Apoo. From people saying Katakuri doesn't hit as hard as Apoo because Katakuri never stunned Luffy this way, to just a complete dissection of Future Sight, to the question of whether or not Luffy was calm. Someone even mentioned that Apoo was targeting the known scars of Luffy and Zoro. Also something to keep in mind, the attack that Apoo used on Zoro and Luffy, he used those same attacks on Kizaru, but there were two different attacks. One's kind of a slashing attack and one's an exploding attack. A possible foreshadow of Zoro versus an invisible blade. Something that we could see happen here, maybe Zoro fights Apoo, where Luffy and Kid go on, but Zoro and Killer stays back and they fight Apoo together, and maybe through figuring this out, once Zoro fights Shiryu in the future, he could use this as a point of reference. Personally, I do think Zoro and Killer are stronger than Apoo together, obviously, but the issue here with Apoo is that he has very unique abilities, and he's maintaining his distance from Zoro and Luffy. So for sound, it's not really clear can observation haki detect sound, because for us, we can see the sound waves, but for them, how visible is it? How do you react to sound? It's interesting as well because there are a lot of people around them, and for Apoo, he was about to attack again, and they said, well, another one is coming. Luffy says, I know, and then he still got blown up. I absolutely love Queen antagonizing them because it plays even more into his personality, but this isn't a big deal at all. I think even at the end where the dialogue confirms that they're talking about their attire, Zoro in particular, he's talking about it's hard to move in. So therefore they got hit and they had people surrounding them, and all of this transpired while they were not really as mobile as they wanted to be. So I think from this point forward, we're going to see a different side to Luffy and Zoro. We're honestly not giving the people around Luffy and Zoro enough credit, where they have arrows, swords, knives. They're attacking them as well, and in the midst of this, Apoo is kind of taking advantage of the commotion. So while I think Apoo is impressive, let's not get ahead of ourselves. At the end of the day, if Apoo fought either Zoro or Luffy individually, I'm betting on Zoro and Luffy. Just point blank period. So for a lot of the naysayers about the chapter and Luffy and Zoro and Apoo, and things doesn't really make sense, Luffy's stronger than that, guys, look at it from this perspective. Pre-time skip, Devil Fruits dominated, right? It was all about having a strong Devil Fruit. Luffy, even though we feel like he was probably as strong as Smoker, if not stronger, he couldn't hit Smoker. So therefore, he was dominated. When we jump to post-time skip and the reintroduction of Haki, making it a lot more prevalent, it brought a balance to the One Piece world. In some ways, it seemed like Haki would dominate and somehow Devil Fruits would fall into the background. Oda is finding a way to make sure Devil Fruits and Haki remain useful. So while I think One Piece isn't necessarily about matchups can be important, but I think it's more so about ability and figuring out different situations and adaptability. That's why Luffy's so great at what he does, because Luffy's great at adapting. And I think in this instance, we should feel good about it, because the issue that we had with Luffy defeating Katakuri and somehow getting access to Future Sense or Future Sight, depending on how you see it, a lot of people felt like it would create some issues. Whereas Luffy at this point should see everything coming. Now it ruins some of the suspense. Luffy should be overpowered. What is Oda doing? Learning Ryo? All these different things with Haki that Luffy was learning, a lot of people felt like it should catapult him to Admiral level. Oda is showing us, even though Luffy is stronger, those severe flaws still remain. And one of the major ones is carelessness. That doesn't just go away just because you've gotten stronger. So for various matchups with Devil Fruit and Haki, even though your Haki could be wildly superior, these Devil Fruits are unique and have special abilities that you have to take care of and worry about. So even for Big Mom, per se, say you can match Big Mom with your strength and you have amazing Haki. It doesn't work on Zeus and Prometheus. So I think in a way, Haki and Devil Fruits, Oda is trying to keep them balanced. So just because Luffy is getting so much stronger on the Haki front, there are still very real limitations to his powers, and it's showing the different ways in which Luffy can improve. I don't think Apoo is done here, even though at the end of the chapter, Kid comes in and that was basically Kid's moment. Finally, Kid is doing something to somewhat of note that we can see. So that entire thing was hyped up just for Kid to get his moment. Where it goes from here, we're not sure, but let's keep an open mind in regards to Haki and Devil Fruits, because juggling both is a difficult task. And even though Haki isn't as fleshed out, there's still more to learn about awakenings for Devil Fruits. I think it keeps things exciting, and it's also showing that Devil Fruit and the various powers it gives you is still very important. People are also saying that Zoro's comment about, hey, if we take too much damage here, we won't last to actually fight Kaido. We have to be aware of the dialogue, right? He says it's not just that they outnumber us, their skill runs deep. So again, back to the people that were surrounding Zoro and Luffy, they're not total scrubs. They have things at their disposal that they can use to hurt them, so they have to evade them while worry about Apoo's sound waves. It's a pretty dire situation. However, people go back to, okay, if you can't get out of this situation, Luffy, how can you handle fighting Kaido? A few things before we go. There's a theory about Brook fighting Apoo because they're both musicians in some way. Still could happen, but now it's doubtful. I think Apoo is above Brook, so that wouldn't really make sense anymore. Another thing is Big Mom. She is still changing apparently. It didn't seem like she took this long when she was changing with Chopper or Bropper, so we'll see what's going on there. People are starting to speculate that Big Mom is planning something against Kaido, that's why she's taking so long, but I'm not sure about that. Big Mom respects Kaido. I understand turning on Judge because she really didn't respect Judge. Judge was father to her. Kaido's on her level. Turning against Kaido in his territory doesn't seem like a very smart thing to do. People are speculating as well that Big Mom actually left and she's not there anymore, but what's the point of that? Why did she come there just to leave without Luffy? So there's still a lot to figure out. But guys, give me your thoughts. What do you think about the chapter? Did the official change anything for you guys? I think there's some slight nuances here, but the scans were pretty on point this week. We're on break next week, so no chapter. Just have to make do. Kind of an opportunity to read some more things and maybe reread some arcs in One Piece. So again, give me your thoughts. Make sure to like the video if you did. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow me on Twitter at BragoDAce. Follow me on Instagram at BragoD.ace. Thank you to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Like and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.